Again, they have not, it's not necessary they have not shown up. The 4-year-olds, I think the numbers are like 300 and something, and I can't get back to the screen. I think it's about 300. The 3-year-olds are first time coming. So in many cases, these are first time kids coming in. We are still advertising, we're still interviewing, but because of the pandemic, families don't feel as comfortable coming. On my Thursday's calls with the Council of Great City School Superintendents, school districts that have gone back to in person have indicated that pre-K through grade 3 numbers are down across the country. So this is not just aligned to us. Families that are young families or young children are saying, I'm keeping my kid home. I have to stay home anyway. So if I have to stay home anyway, my kid is going to stay home with me. So what I'm getting anecdotal, this is an anecdotal from my last conversation on last Thursday with Council of Great City Schools, as Mike Castley was asking superintendents about what lessons learned. One of the lessons learned is that the population of pre-K, kindergarten, first and second are lower than they were last year. Yes, ma'am.
I guess this is more not just early childhood, but for the kids who are stating that they're not coming back, have they indicated what their alternate plans are? The families said, you know, we're going to do homeschooling or another alternative.
I'll just give some anecdotal. I don't have any data in front of me, but many of them are just simply saying they're going to stay home for this year. They don't feel comfortable. Some are going to Catholic schools, as you've heard on the news as well. But that for the number of parents, there are different reasons. And so we have not, obviously, we won't know the numbers, Ms. Val, until Monday when kids are actually supposed to show up. And so we won't know exactly what the numbers are. As principals are calling, social workers and nurses are calling, they're getting a variety of different responses. I would suspect, at the October board meeting, I can likely give you a breakdown because, the last Wednesday, September, we're still counting data. That's when we have to send in information to the state. I will have some data for the board, as I've done historically, to tell you why families have not shown back up. But I would suspect that the pandemic has a great deal to do with that, or the notion of safety and security.
Thank you. So we are still doing our normal tracking of what happens to outgoing students or students who don't return?
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, it's probably more intensified now with social workers and nurses being asked to come to buildings every day such that we could do that. Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarity, that 850 number on page 9, that's not all early childhood, is it?
That's all early childhood. All early childhood. What you see is broken down.
So the only open seats we have in the district are early childhood seats.
No, we have the early childhood was asked, a question was asked by the board about early childhood last meeting. And so I'm specifically talking about early childhood right now. Also because
these are just early childhood numbers.
Yeah, because in addition to that, early childhood families have to come in and register. Families that are returning don't have to come back in and register. Because of the immunization rules and all of those kinds of documents, they have to physically come in and bring those documents to us. If a kid is in kindergarten going to first, we don't do that. That's not a requirement to do. Their name is just rolled over to the next grade.
And then in terms of non-early childhood, open seats.
We have not done analysis on that yet.
But those are the ones we usually get after start date,
yes,
week
sir.
1.
Yes, sir. That is exactly right.
Dr. Adams, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So I'm looking at option 2 under the early childhood page. And so it says pre-K webpage, accessibility to online resources created by teachers. And I'd like to know if that's going to be specific for the school, or is it going to be just across the district as relates to what's on that pre-K page?
I think we're going to do a little bit of both. And Dr. Knight can come up to help me on this question, because I know that we worked on this. We're going to do a district-wide one, but we're asking teachers also to do it on their specific school webpage with their name. Dr. Knight, you want to clarify that?
So yes, ma'am, it will be district-wide as well as the school. This is the feedback from the teachers in order for us to have a district-wide page so that teachers could share resources. So that's the intent.
Okay, so because up under this option as well, it says no virtual options. And so I guess as relates to teachers keeping up with the communication logs, how will they be, I guess, how will we gauge the productivity of the student if there's, I guess, no virtual options? And then also, are they going to be using Microsoft Teams? Like how will, if somebody's not doing virtual, what does that look like for them?
So we will still have Microsoft Teams.
Okay.
There will be constant communication between my office as well as early childhood, as well as school leadership. We have the AIC, so that level of communication will not change. We will still have Teams. Teachers will have the opportunity to use Zoom as well as Class Dojo.
Okay. Okay. All
Ms.
right.
Jo-
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Nave.
Ms. Jones, the only difference is that they won't necessarily, the students won't necessarily have a teacher before them at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, but the kid being there with 5 or 6 other kids, that necessarily won't happen. Families can opt to do that if they want to do virtual. If they opt not to do that, they're doing some work independent with the teacher calling, following up, and having some stuff on their webpage, doing a read aloud and those kinds of things.
But so I guess like as it relates to the work that the child is doing. So for instance, if this teacher, they said they'll post 5 activities and the kid does 2 that week and the other kid does 3 and they're in the same option 2 program, what does that look like? Does it look as though this person, they're lacking, or how will you gauge that?
No, but because keeping in mind it's early childhood, and
Yes.
so this is about development, what's developmentally appropriate. So we will still exercise that with all of our kids, with all of our teachers. And so I just don't want us to get hung up on actual numbers. This is about developmental appropriateness. And so it depends on a child. A child may be able to complete 3 assignments and one may be able to only complete 2. And so that would not be uncommon if we were in brick and mortar.
Okay, but the options are there for them.
Yes.
Got you. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Could you talk a little more about the financial impact of having such a decline in the pre-K enrollment?
So pre-K enrollment is, we don't get funding for pre-K, but there is a cost to cover the cost of staff, transportation, all of those things aligned to it. I don't have an actual dollar amount right now, so I don't want to give you an estimate. But obviously, I think our pre-K impact financially is about $15 to $18 million, depending upon how you look at it. I think I'm in that ballpark. And I'm looking at Ms. Banks and she's nodding. So I'm in that ballpark. So you figure 50%. It's a staffing component. The average salary of a teacher is about $65,000 with benefits. That includes all of the benefits that go with it. And you take that number, you multiply it by 30, and it gives you some idea what that amount is. Not counting teacher assistants, because their cost to the district is about 45 to 50, depending upon what their salaries might be. So there is a cost. We are committed to trying to do our best to make sure that everybody is utilized to support what we're doing right now. Again, as I said to the board before, I may have to come back with another recommendation at another time.
So I'm thinking about the option 1 and option 2. What is the timeline for parents?
Tomorrow.
They're choosing.
Tomorrow. We will notify schools tomorrow, and we will also send something out to parents and give them until Thursday or Friday to give us feedback. Many have already made a decision, as you read the emails and that I read as well. And so we're going to give families some options. And that's why the teachers will be calling to find out what parents want to do.
So then how will that impact staff allocations as far as teachers who are, so I'm thinking that there, some percentage is going to choose option 1 and some will choose option 2. So how is that allocation impact staffing as far as who is teaching and who is kind of supporting at the higher?
A school by school basis, some schools have 100% of the students that they expected to have for pre-K. There's no need to touch anything at all. They will decide who will do the web page and who will do the classroom. They'll make those decisions at the school site. Some have 50% less kids than they expected to have. And so we will be meeting, Dr. Knight and I talked about this earlier today. She will be making some adjustments and we will be having conversations with principals tomorrow to let them know what our recommendations will be at a school level. So this is not a big district-wide decision. This is a school decision because every school is different. Of the 43 elementary schools we have, some have 100% of students in place based on who's registered. 100%. Some are at 25 or 30%. So it's on a case-by-case basis. I want to make one correction. I indicated on slide 16 that the K2 students were going to Mellancrot. That is incorrect. They are going to Wilkerson. That was an error on my part, and I think I put it in the slide wrong. So that should say Wilkerson Elementary, 74 students, K2. It's listed here at the bottom as 86, but that's where the K2 will be, not at Mellancrot. Mellancrot will have Mellancrot, Columbia, and Kennard at their site.
Do we know what percentage of pre-K parents opted for in-person or an ISC?
That's the numbers you see right there at Sticks. Whatever the numbers say at Sticks, 133.
Okay, so out of all of the pre-K enrollment.
That is
So it's
correct.
about 10% of pre-K opted for in-person.
133.
Okay.
And they came from every elementary school, or at least almost every elementary school.
Are there further questions on?
Yeah, just to
Yeah.
follow up on your question about staffing, and I've just noticed that you're going to have some staffing for the instructional support centers. Will any of those displaced early childhood teachers be able to apply for these positions?
So the way we did because we did not want to force persons to work in these environments, we created two positions. One is a coordinator and one is a virtual learning associate. We increased the salary of persons who will be working in this environment, and they opted to go here. So some, to answer your question, is yes, but they self-selected to do so. We did not force anybody to go in. And so they know over the next 8 weeks, they are going to be in this environment. They're going to be with students. We're going to do all of the social distancing and all of those kinds of things for the quarter to be safe. But they understand that when the position ends, they'll go back to their former position at the salary that they had before. If there's some reduction in force, if I have to come back to the board with some recommendation around reduction in force, we will then have to have a conversation. That might be a different conversation.
So are there questions on ISCs?
I do have a question regarding the distribution of schools. In terms of in the St. Louis City regions, North St. Louis, South St. Louis, what are these equitably distributed in terms of where these schools are? Are there as many instructional support centers in North St. Louis, Central West End, South St. Louis?
We tried to address every single area, zip code, if you could. And we did our best to try to align based upon what the requests were. So we didn't do it just based upon the building there. If there were a larger percentage of families indicating they wanted to take advantage of it, that might have been a hub, because that's less students we have to transport from other places to kind of put there. So we did look at this on a case-by-case basis and tried our best to make sure that it was equitable in terms of locations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a follow-up question, you indicated that there has been some kind of pay adjustment for people who decided to go into the instructional support centers?
No, ma'am. What I indicated is that we created 2 new positions at a salary that was different from the salaries of most of the persons who would likely be applying for these positions. So there was not a salary adjustment in the current positions. These are brand new positions that we created to incentivize persons to work or desire to want to work in this environment in conjunction with Local 420.
So does that include certificated and non-certificated
It does
persons?
not include anyone certificated. Those are teachers. They have to remain in the roles of teachers teaching virtual. But we did not have roles defined for the non-cert staff because they are support staff. And so we asked them to look to apply for these positions where they could be direct support for students in the ISC.
All right, and I just want to piggyback because I had the same question. What I heard was we increased the salary, and I understand you created new positions, but what was said was that the salary did increase. My question, so are there these were existing staff members. We didn't have any new hires for these positions outside of what we would normally hire during the season?
We made this exclusively St. Louis Public School employees.
Okay. Okay. And then you also mentioned that we would be keeping 6 feet of distance. I know a month, 2 months ago, we had talked about 3 feet. Are we officially going with 6 feet? I just want to make sure that's clear.
For the ISCs, we're
Yeah.
looking to do 6 feet because we can require no more than 10 in a classroom.
Okay.
So that is every effort to have no more than 10 in every single classroom with 6 feet of distance. And yes, sir, that is what we're working to accomplish.
All right. And then my last question, I know you did talk about the continuance of our PPE and safety recommendations. I know we've brought this up a number of times, but when it comes to staff members, anyone working in a building or around children that does test positive, I know we talked about the protocol. My question is more about the payment for it. So are we requiring a couple things? Are we requiring our staff members to get tested if they display symptoms? Are we paying for those tests? Are we recommending people get tested if they display symptoms and don't do it on their own? What is our protocol for that?
So for the first question, yes, we're requiring that 100% of our staff is tested. Yes, I think the day was the deadline for all that testing to take place, quite frankly. That's number one. Number two, we are not paying for the test. We work with People's Health as well as another health entity. I can't think of the name. It starts with A right now. That has come into.
Affinia?
Say it again.
Affinia?
Affinia. Thank you very much.
It's interesting.
And
Okay.
and they have worked with us to do testing in our buildings and also independently by cars and other places. So yes. The third question I think you had was a question around what happens. Are we encouraging persons to test if they have symptoms? The answer is yes, 100% yes. If someone has symptoms, we require them to go get a test and come back with negative results before they're able to come back to work.
Okay, and then follow up, sorry, and this is the last question that I have on this. We had gotten a presentation before school restart from the Restart Committee about a team that would be like the COVID response team. And I understand this is when we were looking to go back to brick and mortar, but again,
Yes.
looking at this as an opportunity to get it right if we do come back to brick and mortar Q2. What is the status of that COVID response team at this point?
So interesting enough, you may have been in the office with Mr. Sandoval, who called me in his office 2 days ago to make sure that we were putting that in place. We do have 2 persons who are kind of leading that work because to your point, we were not going back to brick and mortar in a holistic kind of way. And so I will be working with staff to identify what that team looks like, who will be responsible for that. Right now, it's coming mainly out of the HR department, but we are going to be looking at other persons. We have an email address called positive@slps.org where persons send all of the results. And so we have somebody managing that piece and documenting and keeping a chart of everyone who's tested positive, what we're doing, how many days they've been out. So we have a dashboard, if you will, that kind of identifies that stuff. But it is housed in HR, and we are looking to have a much more comprehensive group of persons, at least a point person, a much more comprehensive group of persons who will support that effort. So that is something Mr. Sanoma and I had a conversation about, I think, on Friday.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So after looking at several emails that I've received along with my fellow board members, I'm very concerned that some of our staff and students are suffering from stress. What type of mental health resources will be available to help them during the pandemic? Because a lot of people seem to be suffering. And the second question would be about this new saliva test. Would that be something that might be made available to our students as well if a parent is concerned that their child might be exhibiting some symptoms?
I'll answer the second question first. We have not been privy to that test at this point in time. I inquired about it from the health department, and they indicated that it is not available at this point in time holistically. That is what I got on last week, as a matter of fact. In terms of the mental health support, I'll provide you something, Ms. Jones. I don't have it in front of me. Mr. Brown provided something in the past, and I just don't know all of the details, but we do have a plan that for the first week of school, if you will, that we'll be working with kids around the mental health challenges much more than we'll be working with them around academics. But give me an opportunity to provide something to you. Mr. Brown has a plan. That plan has gone to schools, and I know that they're working the plan. I just don't remember all of the details personally right now.
The last section of the presentation was on facilities. Are there any questions on that? Any questions that are still outstanding for any part of the presentation? Okay, thank you, Dr. Adams.
I'd like to close by just saying a couple of things, if you don't mind, Madam President. As I said to staff on Monday, as I will be saying to parents tomorrow, and I'd like to say to the board tonight, as well as the public that might be listening, this is a dynamic situation. Data changes on a regular basis, and we try to be cognizant of that data and make adjustments. Obviously, the early child piece is an example of that. I'm telling you right now, we're going to have 20 ISCs. If somebody comes back with a virus the first 3 or 4 days, we may close that site down. We may not do the ISCs to the extent that I'm publicly telling you right now. Data will drive the decisions that we make. I said to staff, I need you to do 3 things. Number one, take care of yourself. Number two, be flexible and open, because things will change based on data. And lastly, don't be hard on yourself, because there will be some nuances that we have not figured out. There'll be some glitches that happen with technology that we just don't know about. Zoom went down across the country yesterday. It is likely that something like that is going to happen on the 31st. So I need the board and the public to understand that we're working incredibly hard to try to address every issue, but there are issues that we don't even know about today that might present themselves tomorrow or might present themselves next week. So I just need everyone to understand that the data is going to drive the decisions we make. And when we look at stuff like early childhood and numbers are down, we have to pivot. We have to look differently around what we're going to do. I think the failure in this particular case is that some persons over-communicated information, because we talked to teachers and they over-communicated information to parents, which was totally 100% appropriate. It's just that we had not sent out anything officially, which we'll be doing tomorrow. So I just want to thank the for listening to everything tonight in the public, and we will be communicating with all of those parties tomorrow relative to the information you got tonight. Thank you for the questions.
So the next item on our agenda is the legislative agenda. We aren't taking any action or voting on it or making any official changes. This is a preliminary conversation for the board to have prior to our lobbyists coming to speak to us at the end of September. So I will open it up for discussion. Are there aspects of this so what you have in front of you is last year's legislative agenda. Are there things on here that you want us to pay particular attention to, things that you'd like to add or delete? Just again, the preliminary conversation around these issues so we can provide some direction to the conversation that we'll have when Mr. Carroll comes next month. Okay, seeing none, the final item on our agenda is a professional development request from Dr. Roberts. You have it in front of you. She is the delegate for the Council of Great City Schools. Their conference will be virtual. Dr. Roberts, I'll let you share about your request, and then if there is a motion to approve.
Yes, thank you very much, Dorothy. As a delegate to the Council of Great City Schools, I am requesting your support to participate in the virtual conference that's coming up in September. They provide a wealth of information that is very valuable, not just to us, but to other school districts across the country. And everything that I gleaned from the Council of Great City Schools, I share with my fellow board members via the email. So again, I put forth a request to participate in the virtual conference in September.
So if, for whoever makes this motion, so just kind of for some additional context, other board members are welcome to attend. Dr. Roberts' registration is free. Other board members who attend, there would be a cost associated. I have not had any other requests for this, but I would like, if there is a motion to approve this for Dr. Roberts, that it be extended to any board member. That way we don't have to come back for a second approval. So as you make that motion, if you could extend it to all board members, I would appreciate it.
I move that we approve the professional development request for Dr. Joyce Roberts or any other interested board members to attend the 54th Annual Fall Conference of the Council of Great City Schools.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion as it pertains to this item? Ms. Bell?
Ms. Fowler?
Approved.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
I can vote? Oh my. Yes.
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes?
Ms. Vowell?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Good. Ms. Bell?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the second on that.
Susan?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Fowler?
Approved, yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes?
Ms. Vowell?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
Yes.